माया विरचिते लोके चरेन न्यस्य कलेवरम् सम्यक् दर्शनया बुद्ध्या योग वैराग्य युक्तया माया विरचिते लोके चरेन न्यस्य कलेवरम् सम्यक् दर्शनया बुद्ध्या योग वैराग्य युक्तया माया विरचिते लोके चरेन्यस्य कलेवरम्. We will go with word by word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Word by word meaning. Samyak Darshanaya, endowed with right vision. Buddhya, through reason. Yoga, by devotional service. Vairagya, by detachment. Yuktaya, strengthened. Maya Virachite, arranged by Maya. Loke, to this world. Charit, one should move about. Nyasya, relegating. Kalevaram, the body. Translation. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus one can be unconcerned with this material world. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one has to associate with liberated persons not directly physically, but by understanding through philosophy and logic the problems of life. It is stated here, Samyak Darshanaya Buddhya. One has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is famous sequence, first canto. So let's actually just recap those slokas. Those are the sequence, 5 or 6 slokas sequence. That is very instructive, and Srila Prabhupada has given it. He has quoted these slokas in Bhagavad Gita also, 7.1 purport, right? So, yeah. So actually, he has quoted from like later slokas, but I just want to recap, from here, 16th verse, which is a key verse. That many times we think that I don't feel attached or that I don't feel attracted to reading or studying Srimad Bhagavatam so much. Yeah, means I go through it, but not so much attracted, as a child would be interested in reading comics or something like that, matter of entertainment. So why don't we feel that much attracted? So the key solution, the most fundamental and the root solution is mentioned here from 16th verse. Sususo Sraddha Dhanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchihi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. Twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So this is the key. By serving pure devotees, those are who are completely engaged, they have dedicated their lives in the service of Krishna, right? Essentially, right? So then basically we develop ruchi in the Vasudeva Katha, essentially Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc. Right? So like that. So that is the main thing. By serving, we get affinity. Now what happens when we develop affinity and we actually read or hear or study, then Krishna specifically cleanses, right? He is a benefactor of truthful devotee. Cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of a devotee. So that is also mentioned. So started with serving the pure devotees, then developing the taste, and when we hear it, and read it, basically we study message of Krishna, then Krishna personally cleanses the desire for material enjoyment, and that is the root thing for material of material entanglement, right? As soon as we basically give up the idea of material enjoyment, then we will be easily and firmly established in devotional service to Krishna. So then further what happens? By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam classes, by the way, it doesn't mean only weekday classes. It could be Srila Prabhupada's primarily Srila Prabhupada's lectures and his purports, and basically those who have full allegiance to Srila Prabhupada. So reading, hearing those texts especially, right? Yeah. So by regular study of Srimad Bhagavatam, and service to pure devotee, Bhagavatam, person Bhagavat and book Bhagavat both, right? All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service is irrevocably established in the heart. Then what happens? As soon as it is nishtha level we reach, then what happens? The effect of nature's mode of passion and ignorance, lust, desire, hankering disappear from the heart. So heart cleansing is already going on now, right? By regular study of Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah. And then finally what happens? Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, Suddha Sattva. Yeah, so there is a gradual process. Yeah, it will not happen overnight. Yeah, unless someone has been sent to deliver us. If that devotee is like at that standard, that's a different thing. But otherwise, for a common, sadhakas or common devotees, progressive devotees, it's a gradual process. So the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge. Yeah, it's not just that negation of material or negative thing, not the negation of negative, but positive scientific knowledge of the personality of God here. It's not nirakar, it's personality and positive thing about his name, fame, associates, paraphernalia, his abode, everything. That is actually gained. That also happens, by the way, by the grace of Krishna. Not that just if we follow something rigorously, then Krishna is obliged to do that. It's not like that. That's difference. But anyway, what is mentioned is gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. By the way, this could be achieved. This liberation doesn't mean only after giving the body, giving up the body. It could very well be in this life itself. It depends on intensity and sincerity of our sadhana bhakti, right? So, like Rupa Goswami says, "Iha yasya haridasya karmana manasagira niklasavasthato jivan mukta vidyate." Right? So, point is, if we have unflinching faith in Guru and Krishna, basically Krishna and Guru instructions, and we follow, adhere to that, essentially what Gurus say, they ask us to perform our devotional service with full sincerity. Essentially that, right? It's not that Krishna independently, he would, grant us something independent of this, whether we follow the practice or not. Not like that. Depending on our sincerity, Krishna will actually mercifully give us that insight, positive scientific knowledge. Krishna will award that. Finally, what happens then? At that stage, vidyate hridaya granthis. Yeah, that knot in the heart is pierced. And all misgivings are cut to pieces. Misgivings like, I am the controller, I am the enjoyer of this world or material thing and all that, right? Or I have this designation, that designation, or some mentality which is apart from Krishna's will and desire, right? So these kind of things, all misgivings are cut to pieces. Yeah? The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master rather than mind or senses as the master or polluted intelligence as the master. Self means the soul, essentially, right? So this all happens by the mercy of Krishna. If we remain sincerely engaged in our devotional service, primarily attentive chanting and reading basically or hearing Krishna Katha and serving the devotees. These are the primary things. Coming back, let's come back here. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto. So there was one more verse which is actually most primary. I missed out. So where is that? Yeah, here. So that's the 7th verse, right? Verse number 7. Yeah. Vasudevya Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janiyati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yat Ahetukam. So by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Yeah, so this happens. So this is a natural byproduct. In bhakti process, we don't artificially or separately try for renunciation or detachment, right? That's not bhakti process. Bhakti process means essentially parang drishtva nivartate, as Bhagavad Gita mentions. So let's see, that's very important, instructive also. BG 2.59. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, Visyavinivartante niraharasya dehina rasvarjang rasopyasya parang drishtva nivartate. The whole matter is actually this parang darshvani vartate. We are performing our sadhana so that one day, when Guru, our spiritual master, respected spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Parampara, entire Guru Parampara essentially, and Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gauranga, right? Guru and Gauranga, when they are happy with our service, continued devotional service, our sadhana bhakti, right? Most of us are at sadhana bhakti level, right? So then one day, Krishna will give us that higher taste, genuine higher taste from within. That will happen one day. It's not that Krishna is aloof, randomly he distributes this higher taste. It's not like that. Krishna doesn't distribute higher taste randomly. Basically, the genuine mellow or permanent, ecstatic feeling about, related to his association, his service, even the holy name, Krishna Katha. So that full or genuine, ultimate attachment to anything related to Krishna, that will be awarded by Krishna based on our sincerity and when we are pakka in our sadhana bhakti, right? It's not randomly what Krishna gives this higher taste. It's not like that. So parang darshva nivartate is like, that is the main thing. That's the main whole thing actually. Yeah, it's not random, as I mentioned several times. I see some chat. Okay, we will see. Oh, sorry. Program links. I completely missed out. Sorry for that. So let me see the link. Copy link. Yeah. I completely. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah. Yeah. So this is the actual thing. One the secret was, or one of the main, aphorism or secret formula was serving the pure devotees, right? Then we develop Vasudev Katha Ruchi in Vasudev Katha. Another thing is, by continuing that progressive devotional service, one day, or someday, one day Krishna will give this Parang Drishta Anivartate, genuine higher taste. There are so many instances, even in recent times, like even within 1,000 years or so, not only in Dwapara Yuga or Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, even within Kali Yuga, within 1,000 years, there have been many such instances which we can read, you can find out on our own. There have been many. Yeah. So now, this was mentioned. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto. This is very important, divine and divinity service. Yeah. Let's continue. The devotee's intelligence is always in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was already mentioned, the mind is enlivened by the contact of or touch of a devotional service. Mind is actually there, it is functioning even in the fully conditioned state. And for devotees, what happens? That the intelligence is in touch with Supreme Lord, Krishna, essentially Krishna, right? And that's the difference. Now, before, in a conditioned state, mind, it is the main cause of entanglement in this material world. Actually, when we actually, primary 16 elements of the creation, right? Or our material existence, there are primary 16 elements, right? 5, knowledge acquiring, 5 basically activity related, 5 karmendriyas, 5 gyanendriyas, and then mind 11, and 5 either sometimes it's mentioned in Panchamahabhut, that is 16, or sometimes it's mentioned as 5 objects of senses, subtle, like Rupa Rasa Gandha Sparsa and Vani, like Sabda, right? Rupa Rasa Sabda Gandha Sparsa, 5 things, right? So essentially those 16, but the mind is actually depicted as the axle. So these 16 are spokes of the wheel, which actually indicates the cycle of material existence. But the axle of those elements are that is called the mind. So without axle, you don't basically one cannot travel, right? So wheels need to have axles. So mind is called the central, dhuri, or the axle. So mind is the actually conditioned state of mind, that is cause of material existence. And when that mind is enlivened by touch with devotional service, then it is the cause of actually liberation. Liberation or positive thing is going back to Lord's service in one of the spiritual planets, right? So continue. His attitude towards the material existence is one of detachment. Again, this is a natural byproduct. For he knows perfectly well Yeah, it is not just preliminary information. Basically, it's perfectly well, and we will see later. For he knows perfectly well that this material world is a creation of illusory energy. Realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. So it's akarma or naiskarma essentially. But the first word is most important in this sentence. Realizing, realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. We also know, I also know theoretically, to some extent by practice, because we chant our 16 rounds and read basically or study here Krishna Katha. So yeah, to some extent we know, but this means here samyak. The sloka actually say, if you say samyak darsanaya, completely or perfectly, right vision, but perfectly endowed with right vision. That's the samyak meaning of samyak. So here realizing means perfect realization, that and complete realization, that one is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That's the difference between the state which is mentioned in this sloka versus the progressive devotees, right? So this is a full realization state. The devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. Thus, at the end, he gives up his material body or the material energy. And as pure soul, he enters the kingdom of God. As Bhagavad Gita says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yas chasmi tattva tato mam tattvato gyatva visate tad anantaram. Then he enters basically the kingdom of God, right? So let's see that quickly. It's important. 54 or 55, 56. Let's see. Bhaktya mam, 55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yas chasmi tattva tato mam tattvato gyatva Vishate tad anantaram, enters, right? Say here, he enters. How? This is one of the most famous, most well quoted sloka from Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada, of course, after Sarvadharman Parityajya. Yeah, one can understand me as I am, as a supreme personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. Essentially, Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, right? And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, basically basically the spirit soul, doesn't have any other thing to dwell upon, right? And that devotee is thinking always of Krishna. That is the meaning of full consciousness of me. Yeah, not that we know Krishna fully, that is not possible, but sufficient knowledge anyway that will be given by Krishna himself about himself. But full consciousness means we are not distracted by any other material topics or enjoyment or Gramme Katha or anything. 24 hours apart from sleeping or other things, when we are awake, we are fully engrossed in thought of Krishna, essentially performing such devotional some devotional service rather than just smaranam. So that is not recommended for us. Anyway, one is in full consciousness of me. By such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Vishate tad anantaram. Yeah. So this is what we could correlate from the last sentence. Yeah. He ends up. Yeah. So bhaktya mam abhijanati, right? That is the solution. Throughout Bhagavatam, it's essentially science of bhakti. And so one more thing was there. The devotee discharges devotional service and completely aloof from material action and reaction. Yeah. So akarma, right? Yes, or neskarma. Essentially, it is essentially in plain language, it's bhakti, right? So there is no such action and reaction. Let's suppose, okay, let's recite the Mangalachara. Om Jnanatmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kata Mahyam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatang Sahagana Raghunathan Vitantang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। This is the conclusive or conclusion of the whole chapter, and we can, take lessons from the whole chapter here, and we understand. We can, try to understand a bit what all Lord Kapil Deva, essentially Lord Krishna, wants to convey here, right? So one thing I wanted to mention here, aloof from material action and reaction, right? So if we actually, remember Jayananda Prabhu, His Grace Jayananda Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada is one of the dear disciples, right? Prabhupada was fond of him. So he was like a, exceptional devotee. He engaged many of today's, gurus in ISKCON. He involved many of them in ISKCON, actually. And like my own spiritual master, His Holiness Jai Pataka Swami Guru Maharaj. So he was engaged or connected to ISKCON by His Grace Jayananda Prabhu. So why I am recounting Jayananda Prabhu's incident? So, he used to drive taxi, despite after coming, in contact with ISKCON also, but his driving taxi and earning the money was for temple, for the upkeep of the temple. It was not for, that keep some saving and, personal expenses. No, his driving of taxi driving was solely for the purpose of maintaining the temple. So that is completely a Krishna conscious activity. There is no material action and reaction of that, okay, or any such thing, right? So that's the thing. If someone is, someone is dedicating one's a fair share of earned money, whether through a business or any job or any other occupation, that activity is not material activity. So in Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhakti ladder, Krishna mentions, 12.8, right? Mayyeva manadha so mayi buddhing nivesya. Nivesya mayyeva ato urdam na sansaya. So he says that always you engage your mind and intelligence in thinking about me. If you think about me all the time, you will certainly come to me without any doubt. Okay. And he says, finally, the last thing, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11, he says, sarva karma phalat tyagam, like that. So one can choose to dedicate one's earning to Krishna, and that also makes one progress. Yeah. So point is, any such thing, dedication of legally earned money, or Lakshmi or kind or anything, right, to Krishna, that is that karma will not be counted as fruitive activity, right? So it's important. Yeah. And key formulas, two things we noticed during basically sharing of the purport. One was that serving the pure devotees and book Bhagavatam. So these two lead, actually, even among these two, serving the pure devotees, right? That is the main starting point, right? If we serve a pure devotee somehow or other, then we will develop taste in hearing Krishna Katha. As soon as we hear Krishna Katha, then Krishna cleanses our heart and we make progress towards Him. That's one key formula, serving a pure devotee. Second formula was basically, our key thing was Parang Drishtvani Vartate. How will that happen? The genuine higher taste. Sadhana, okay, we started. But another key formula is here, serving, I mentioned first. Second is associating, right? As it is mentioned in the beginning of this purport, that is not a physical association, just being in the proximity of a pure devotee. No, it is like hearing from them so that our heart is transformed. Association means transformation of the heart, right? From a tendency to enjoy the material world to genuinely believing and being convinced that we are servants, like that. We can add so many levels of servant of God, of Krishna, right? So that's the, all great and humble, they become humble devotees. So they all acknowledge this fact, right? We are not directly servant of Krishna. We serve Krishna through the basically servant, das, dasanudas, right? Like that. That is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. Like that's what he elaborated, he practically showed, right? Das, dasanudas, right? So that's the thing. So yeah, so second thing was Parang Drishtvā Nivartate, but that will happen, that is a culmination. Parang Drishtvā Nivartate is not the beginning thing, it's a culmination. How that happens? we have to associate with pure devotees, liberated persons, essentially pure devotees, right? So association means hearing from them, having full shraddha in them, these kind of things, so that we hear from them Krishna Katha essentially, and instructions, right? So instructive messages, when we hear from them, then basically that leads to change in heart. That is very important. Lord Krishna gives pure devotion through the medium of a pure devotee, not directly. It does not, because Krishna himself will not award it. Otherwise, there are a lot of things about it. Okay, so yeah, associate with a secondary association. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also mentions, that association, is is the main thing in the beginning as well as even when we are fully matured. He says, Krishna Bhakti Janma, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mulahaya Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prema Janma Teho Puna Mukhyanga. Like even in the beginning, Krishna Bhakti is basically, even in the beginning, Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mulahaya Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha is the cause or main element in the beginning of our Krishna Bhakti, and it is still the main component even when we reach Krishna Prema level. Krishna Prema Janme Teho Punah Mukhyanga. Even at the level of Krishna Prema, Sadhu Sangha is mandatory or main component of sustaining anything, right? So this is the thing. So association, we have to be careful about our association. Otherwise, bad association leads us again in the downward spiral to hellish situation, as mentioned in the 32nd verse of this chapter itself. Say, Yadi asadbhir pati punah sishnodara kritodyamay asthito ramate jantus tamo vishati purvavat. Essentially, if therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. So this sexual enjoyment does not prohibit, begetting children. It is about sexual indulgence. That Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in second canto, second chapter, where actually, 5-6 slokas come about the Paramatma, Lord in the Heart chapter. So we can follow there. Essentially, it does not prohibit, this thing altogether. Otherwise, what is the meaning of Grihastha life? But indulgence is prohibited in the progress, upward progress, right? So that was the thing I wanted to quote. Yeah. Yadi asadbhir pathi punaha shishnodar kritodyamaya asthito ramate jantus tamo vishati purva. Then again the jantu, the living soul will go back to hellish condition. Yeah. Fine. So now there are, so two things we discussed. Yeah. Like Param Drashva Nivartate, but which is culminated by the power of positive association of liberated devotees, right? So when main thing, is again, when we are in association, that is, then what happens? Sravanam, right? Hearing of Krishna Katha, that is what happens, right? In association of pure devotees. Hearing is the root of all and everything. Yeah, of course, hearing needs Shraddha, then only it will work. But Shraddha, Ado Shraddha. But that Shraddha is also caused by some knowing or unknowing service to a pure devotee in this life or previous life. Or some pure devotees or very advanced devotees, they actually give this, causelessly, they give something, when they catch us in the beginning, right? When we were not in, not in contact with ISKCON and Bhakti process, what happens that some or other preachers, right? Sincere preacher, they actually give something, either it's Krishna Prasad, which is very potent, or some other association in some other forms. That actually makes us basically gain some Shraddha. So that Shraddha, it sounds like Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sangha, then Bhajan Kaya, Anurtha Nivrti, that it looks like Shraddha is independent. No, Shraddha is not like, just hanging on some tree or suddenly it will come in our heart. No. Knowingly or unknowingly, either we have served some devotee or some devotee causelessly gives that Shraddha to us. That is important. So everything, root of everything or beginning of everything is Sadhu Kripa or Sadhu Sangha. So that we should understand. In several places throughout the Bhagavatam, essentially, Bhagavatam is about hearing only. So that's the context of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Parikshit Maharaj, he is hearing from bona fide devotee, a top class devotee who is counted among Mahajana. Sukadeva Goswami is counted among Mahajana, 12 Mahajanas, which are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? like Swayambhur Narada Sambho Kumaro Kapilo Manu Prahlado Janako Bhismo Balir Vayasakir Vayam. Vayam means Yamaraj, of course. Vayasakir means son of Vyasdev, that is Sukdev Goswami. So Parikshit Maharaj listened very carefully, attentively Srimad Bhagavatam. So entire Bhagavatam is basically hearing a session itself, right? So only if we hear repeatedly again and again Krishna Katha from Srila Prabhupada or Srila Prabhupada's loyal followers. This terminology is very important. So if we hear from them, then basically a definitive change happens in the heart, and we slowly, gradually, we develop, basically we give up the tendency to do fruitive activity, right? So throughout Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that effect of hearing, right? So ninth canto also it's mentioned, Yasmin Satkarna Piyuse Yasas Tirthvare Sakrit Srotranjalir Upasprishya Dhunute Karma Vasanam. So 9:24:62 is famous. So here we will see Yasmin Satkarna Piyuse Srotranjalir Upasprishya. Yeah, Srotranjalir, see what is mentioned here in the form of hearing the transcendental message. Upasprishya, touching exactly like the water of Ganges. Yeah, Dhunute, yeah, destroys. Simply by receiving the glories of the Lord through purified transcendental ears, the devotees of the Lord are immediately freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. Yeah, but this is called oral reception. Yeah, oral reception means we are fully receptive, not that we are, just going through the motion of, attending classes. If we are fully, attentively listening, with a hankering, mood of hankering, right? That is important. That is called that lolyam. That is the one mulyam, right? Lolyam is the mulyam. Yeah. So if we have that hankering to hear Krishna Katha, with full attention from Srila Prabhupada or his followers, then basically this will happen. Freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. And that is the main thing, right? That is the main cause of our continued existence in material world. Yeah, we have material desires, some or other. Yeah, that needs to be discussed with our respective counselors or our respective spiritual master. The individual's condition, right? That I cannot summarize in this session itself, right? That's a matter of counselor or guru. Yeah. So yeah, this is the thing. So the thing is, Sravanam leads to everything after coming in contact with devotees and all that, right? Sravanam is a main thing. And Srila Prabhupada says in the, Prahlad Maharaj, that famous sloka, 7, 5, 23 and 24, that if among the 9 limbs of devotion, that is hearing is performed perfectly well, sufficient hearing, perfectly hearing, these kind of adjectives, Srila Prabhupada has added. Yeah, it's not just hearing in a normal way, general way. Hearing, right? Full attention. That again, hearing has 3 steps, as many senior devotees mention from the scripture. That hearing, Sravanam, then Mananam, right? Contemplation. Later, I listened to this class, and during the day, or maybe over the course of time, I keep on thinking about it. Okay, this point I liked. How this thing can be actually realized or practiced? This kind of contemplation, right? So, and then Nididhyasanam. Actually, if there is some instructive message, something needs to be done, then we have to follow up on that, right? So Nididhyasanam, Sravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, that completes the Sravanam process, it is said. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 2 kinds of passages. Actually, I inquired about this from once from His Holiness Bhakti Brihat Bhagavad Swami Maharaj. When he was visiting Bangalore, he was doing Namamrit seminar over 5 days. Then I inquired, is it like Bhagavatam has only instructive thing or what? He did mention that there are 2 sorts of, you could say, 2 sorts of passages. One is the pure hearing, like Krishna Katha, like you can just release, some of Krishna's pastime, yeah, and some are instructive. So some are like, you out to do after hearing that message, out to perform some positive action, and some are like, just for releasement. So essentially all are for releasement, but some are like, impetus for doing some positive devotional service. Yeah, essentially book distribution. So Tadvag Visargo Janatag Viplavo, that sloka, in that Srila Prabhupada mentions that India has failed in its in her duty to spread the Bhagavatam message all over the world. So that naturally means that we should distribute more and more books, right? So, but some pastimes, how Krishna saved the Pandavas. So that means that we should believe that if we are also sincere devotee, Krishna will definitely protect us in all adverse conditions. Protect what is best in a way which is good for us, right? All that. So there are two sorts of passages, just which just strengthens our faith, and it makes our heart more attached to Krishna. That is one sort. Another is some instructive, right? So at the end of Srimad Bhagavatam, Suta Goswami recounts that, Tadeva Ramyam Ruchirang Navam Navam. Tadeva Saswan Manaso Mahotsavam. Tadeva Shokaranam Shoshanam Nirnam Yad Uttama Sloka Yaso Giyate. So let's quickly read the translation. Amazing verse. This is he became ecstatic at the conclusion, towards the end. Tadeva Ramyam Ruchirang Navam Navam. Let's see the meaning, right? Thus, those words describing the glories of the all-famous personality of Godhead are attractive, relishable, and ever-fresh. Ruchirang Navam Navam. Indeed, such words are a perpetual festival for the mind, and they dry up the ocean of misery. Right? Such sweet slokas, right? Just reciting these slokas with proper rhyme, so that itself gives us ecstasy. And then what to say about actually reciting or reading or remembering some of the pastimes of Krishna, right? So the Sravanam is the root. After we have heard sufficiently and with full sincerity, then we will, and only then we will be able to remember, right? Smaranam. How would Smaranam happen? Constant Smaranam. And Krishna says, Mayyava man adharsva, mayi buddhing nivesaya. So man adharsva. How will the mind be fully engaged in Krishna? By remembering Krishna's pastimes, right? How Krishna deals with his devotees. Now, of course, as we progress in bhakti, we do get some personal reciprocation with the Lord. That also happens. It's not that there is no reciprocation. We have been chanting and reading and hearing for tens of years or decades, and still there is no reciprocation from Krishna. It's not possible. Some reciprocation definitely we do experience, right? So it's an individual thing. We don't need to elaborate on that, but it happens with everyone. Whoever is seriously and continually engaged in devotional service. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that how would Smaranam happen? Smaranam will happen only when Sravanam is there. Like we have heard or read or studied. Then only that a repeated hearing. Then by repeated hearing and contemplation, and Smaranam, then we are fully attached to Krishna. That is further mentioned, was very important, in the Virat Rupa chapter, right? Universal form. Yes, my favorite reference from Srila Prabhupada's purpose. Let's see. Yeah. Sorry. That. Yeah. See. This is mentioned to hear about Krishna from authorities. This is the actual Vedic process, and those who are actually in the Vedic line hear about Krishna from authority, and by repeated hearing about him, Krishna becomes dear. This is the basic formula. Bhakti is not complicated, just that we have to continue our process. When we put water for boiling on a stove, then water doesn't start boiling immediately, right? We have to keep the switch on. Gas supply has to be maintained. Gas or electricity supply has to be maintained, and only after continued process for some time, then water starts, steaming and then finally boiling. So we cannot assume that I just started 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and why am I not feeling Krishna prema or some asakti and other things? It depends how much devotional service we have done in previous life. There are so many factors. Other factor is some causeless mercy of a pure devotee. So many additional factors are there, but that causeless mercy is also not by lottery, right? If some pure devotee sees that, we are sincerely engaged, we are struggling struggling all the way to do our sadhana bhakti nicely, then maybe some sudden causeless mercy possible, but that will not happen in the void, right? We have to continue our sadhana bhakti, and then maybe Krishna or some pure devotee may give us causeless mercy, maybe sooner than what we deserve, when we deserve, right? So it's possible, but we have to continue. So Sravanam is the root, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, right? Sravanadi Suddha Chitte Karaya Udaya, right? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunaya Sravanadi Suddha Chitte Karaya Udaya, something like that, right? Sravanadi, everything, etc. Main thing is Sravanam. Yeah, of course. Srila Prabhupada mentions about Sravanam that chanting and hearing the holy name also. Sravanam doesn't mean only we give up our chanting of minimum 16 rounds and we just continue to hear Krishna Katha. We say, apart from my occupation, I am hearing Krishna Katha for 8 hours. So why do we need chanting? No, that is not tenable. That is not a bona fide process. Bona fide process of in every yoga is established by Lord himself, Lord Krishna himself. So Lord Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and to set the ideal standard of bhakti. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra duly and every day because he has to set an example. Yeah, what is that? Basically, mam vartamanu vartante manusya parth sambhava, right? So this is like whatever Krishna does, the common mass of people will follow that. So as in the role of the topmost devotee, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated. Of course, he did not have to struggle over chanting Krishna's name. He used to do it, with tears in his eyes, right? That's the famous photo we might have seen, how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to chant or remember Krishna every moment, like he is shedding tears, constant tears, not just one drop or during 16 rounds, 1 or 2 drops, not like that. Constantly he was shedding tears from his eyes. That's a very famous photo. I don't want to search right now in Google, but okay, let's quickly see that. Actually, even though I said I don't want, but that photo is extremely, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gambira. Yeah, let's see if we can quickly see the photo which I intended to show. If it is quickly visual, yeah, this is the photo. Yeah, let's see the photo. It's highly instructive and inspirational how it hits our heart or catches our heart. See how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looks while chanting. So tears are rolling from his eyes constantly, and he used to feel separation from Krishna as a very chaste wife, feels the long separation from Krishna, or a beloved of Krishna, right? Something like that. Okay, let's come back. And that's and that's the level of Lord when he whatever role he performs, right? So he performs it perfectly. Whether it's Lord Ramachandra, basically a son, right? Or Krishna, Nandanandan. So whatever role Krishna plays, he plays it perfectly. So we cannot be Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course. We cannot be God, we cannot be Krishna. But he set the example, right? So yeah, to be able to reach that stage of chanting, we have to hear very intimately about Krishna. We have to have very intimate understanding of or remembrance of Krishna's pastime, his mood, right? So again, this still looks abstract. So I will conclude by one elaboration here. How we would be able to know intimately? Only when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, message of Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita again and again. For example, one concrete example, right? How should we remember Krishna? For example, pick the Venu Geet Leela of Krishna. I'm not talking about Gopi Geet or Brahmar Geet. That is later. 21st chapter of 10th canto. That is like an amazing sequence. How when Krishna plays flute, then all the immovable entities, they become, they tremble in ecstasy, they become moving. And how, the animate objects, they become stunned, they cannot move, right? Such elaborate descriptions have been there. Only 20 verses are there, but all are full of, they are very rich actually. So let's actually, anyway, see one sloka from there on how gopis actually, basically they were, advanced. Yeah, let's see. So first verse, let's see here. First, second, third. Yeah. This is there. They see how they are describing Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends, right? And then see when they began to speak about Krishna, but when they remembered his activities, then they could not speak. So that is like a kant, avruddha kant, right? Choked choke the throat, right? So this is the thing, and this is a topmost example of how to remember Krishna, right? His depiction, right? When he herds the cows, takes the cows to Vrindavan forest, right? Baraha Pitam Natavarababu Karnayo Karnipara. So by reading such passages again and again, then we develop very sweet and nice, image or nice, memory of about Krishna, right? And see how it concludes. I will not go into every sloka, but see, thus narrating to one another the playful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he wandered about in the forest, the gopis became fully absorbed in thought of him. How? By narrating to one another. But before that, we have to read, right? We have to read and hear from Acharya. Read from the Srila Prabhupada books and hear the associated lectures, right? And then we can describe to each other, even, not necessarily in a formal lecture session, but even when we are taking prasad, or we are, let's suppose, standing in the queue for prasad, that time also we could discuss quickly within few minutes, and our mind remains Krishnized or spiritualized, whatever we can say, right? So this is the basic process, but for that we have to read, and that we can that taste we can develop by serving pure devotees. So 2-3, let's recap and we will end. Serving the pure devotees, then we develop taste in Vasudev Katha, and then as soon as we keep on reading, then every anarthas gradually that is cleansed by Krishna personally. Krishna actually cleanses. It's not that a mechanical automatic process. Krishna actually cleanses for the truthful devotee. And another is basically association. Yeah, association of pure devotees, or very advanced, much more advanced than us, not the just the peer level or others, right? So that is the second thing. And essentially, if we again, these are the only two things. Others are a result of that. And parang drishva nivartate, that is the culmination. That's not the first day thing. Parang drishva nivartate happens after sustained, hearing, chanting. So this is what I wanted to say. Movement of living entity. So that movement in this world can be stopped, and the living entity, the soul, can go back to the spiritual world only when one has, perfectly become Krishna conscious, fully Krishna conscious. Then only this movement of living entity within this material world, or between different basically wombs of mother in different species, can be stopped only when we are fully spiritual, or fully one in purpose with Krishna, like when we are fully free from the modes of passion, ignorance, and when we are in pure spiritual existence, sattva suddha. But that can happen only by our continued and sustained devotional service. Then we can hope that someday Krishna will give us parang drishva nivardate and all that, right? So that's the message. So we can stop the movement by progressive devotional service. If there is any question, we can discuss. Okay, looks like we don't have any question, so we can stop here. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.